to Lane Transit District's Strategic Planning Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. I'm Tiffany Edwards. I'm the vice chair, and I'm going to get us kicked off. So I'm going to start with a roll call. So if you are here, please just indicate so by saying here. Beth Blackwell, Greg Evans, Heather Buck, Gino Grimaldi, Kelly Sutherland, Rob Zako.
Here.
Vidal Francis.
I'm here.
Claire Syrette. Scooter Milne.
Here.
Jack Boyson.
Here.
Paul Comery. Comery, thank you. Sarah Mazzi.
Here.
Peter Semeth.
Yeah.
Semeth, okay. Alma Jesus is en route, she's not here for now, and Tiffany Edwards present, so that's roll call. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak? Okay, no public comment. We're making this way too easy, guys. All right, well then I will kick it over to Dave for staff updates.
Great.
Is that what we're gonna start with? Okay.
Yeah, so Dave Roth, Director of Planning at LTD. So just wanted to provide a few staff updates. Actually, I have kind of a long list to go through because we haven't met for a while. First off, you should have on the table there an invite to the State of the District event. It's also on the screen, so that's great. Please join us. This will be the second annual one of these that we've put on. Last year was great. We had great turnout. And I think people really enjoyed the event. So that's October 7th at the Ford Alumni Center. We have a great program. I don't know if we have the list there. Okay. Have we confirmed? Still? Okay.
We're still working.
Surprise speaker to be confirmed. Yes. Zako.
Were you raising your hand, Rob?
I didn't know that I was. I didn't, I mean, at some point I'd like to talk about what happens in that space a week later, but
That's on my list
yeah,
as well.
Okay.
Please join us if you can. I think there's an RSVP on there, so please respond. So the next item on my list is the event that's happening the next week, and I was hoping, Rob, you could speak to that.
I can speak to that.
I can chime in as well. So yeah.
So Anna Zieverts is a woman who works for Disability Rights Washington. She was born visually impaired, so she's legally not able to drive, and her daughter was born with the same condition. And she wrote a book called When Driving's Not an Option. And she started the week without driving, and she is a national speaker, and we are bringing her to town for a couple days and having a big public event at this space at this time a week later on October 14th. And hoping that everybody here can attend and LTD board members. And LTD is very generously co-sponsoring this event. We're hoping that Jameson will be part of that conversation. We're hoping that Mayor Karen Knudsen will be part of that conversation. Anna is really not wanting to talk at us, but wanting to share some of her experiences about what it's like getting around the world if you can't drive, but hear from the audience as well. And similarly, there'll be some food and drink before that, and her book will be available for sale, and she'll be signing that, and then she'll be in town for another couple days and doing some other things, including with LTD.
Yeah, thanks.
I can share with whoever by email. We've got a landing page, and people can just let us know if they want to come.
That'd be great. We could share that out as well. So yeah, fantastic. If you haven't seen her speak or read the book, I definitely recommend it. I've seen her speak at a couple of conferences, and really brings in that perspective. Transit users that we need to be paying attention to.
The statistic, which is hard to believe, is something like a third of Americans don't drive. Now, most of those are too young to drive, under age 16. Some are too old, some are low income, some are disabled, some have legal issues. But collectively, it's not an insignificant part of our world, of our nation. And yet we don't really design our transportation system for those people. We design it as if everybody can and does drive. And that's really the issue.
Thanks. All right. So next on my list. So earlier this year, we approved an SPC work plan. And at the time, we acknowledged that it was a living document subject to change. So we have some changes. coming up. And just if I could speak to those briefly. So the three main items on our work plan for this fiscal year are an update of our coordinated human services transportation plan, which you'll hear more about from Brandon tonight. That one is still tracking sort of the same schedule as we had proposed. Our fixed route service policy update. That one we had intended to have an item tonight, but that's getting bumped to the next meeting just based on progress we're making on the project so far. So you'll hear about that at our November meeting. And then the long range mobility plan, which is our big project that we've been trying to get off the ground for some time now. We are beholden to the ODOT procurement process because this is partially ODOT. However, we're making great progress, and I think we're going back for the last sort of round of reviews at ODOT. Yep. And it feels like a matter of weeks before we're able to get this thing started. So feeling pretty good about things there. We did select a consultant to do the work. It's going to be led by Parametrics. They have offices in Portland and Eugene, and then we have several sub consultants on the project as well. We're very excited about that. I wanted to share a little bit about a sort of a small project we're doing right now, but it has big implications. It's something we're calling the Fare System Roadmap. If anybody has paid attention to LTE's budget or our community investment plan, you will have seen that there's a line item in there for a new fare system. So big investment in a new fare system. And this encompasses hardware, software, and other elements that go into an overall fare system. And we thought it would be a good idea to sort of take some time internally and think through what are all the different elements associated with that, and sort of what's the direction we should be going. How do we think about strategic investments in a fare system, and at what point you make those investments along the way, since it involves multiple different components. So this is primarily sort of like internal work with some key stakeholders being engaged. The result of this will be what we're calling a roadmap that will be finalized in October. And we'll take that, and that will be the basis for future engagement, likely through the long range mobility plan with a broader audience in the community. So we'll share more when that thing is sort of more presentable and ready to go with this group, most likely next meeting in November. We implemented our fall service changes on Sunday, and we're pretty excited about this. One of the key changes is the new downtown loop. And this one is a collaborative effort between City of Eugene and LTD. And although we do have some construction detours in place right now because of the 6th and High project, we're getting really good feedback from this in the first days, like from multiple sources, from community members, from operators, so on and so forth. And this extends the Campbell Center route further south down to Midtown, so south of downtown, capturing Safeway and sort of that commercial area on 18th. So people are really excited about this. I think I just saw a compliment come in this afternoon from somebody living at Yapoa Terrace, and they're super excited about being able to get on the bus and go all the way down to like the pharmacy at Hiramans and get back on a single ride. So really good feedback. The other two significant changes are on the 36, which goes out West Eugene. Now it's been extended to go out towards Hynix and capture some of the new multifamily apartments that are out there on 18th. And then the 41 was rerouted. Slight change, but moving away from Danabo and on to Bertelsen to get a little bit closer to some of more houses, more residential areas, more commercial areas there. And I should remind people that these service adjustments are recommendations that came from the system review plan that was approved by our board in the fall of last year. So that plan has a lifespan of about 3 years in terms of like how we implement those changes. So we're just rolling those out as we can with, you know, as we're able to bring on more operators and so on and so forth. So we're excited about the changes. We're getting good feedback so far. we've talked a lot with this committee about the rural services pilot. I think if you've been reading some of the news, you may have seen some articles come out recently about us canceling the initial procurement and going out with a second procurement. That's about all I can say about it right now because it is an active RFP. You know, the main thing here is that the project has been delayed a little bit because of that, but we're planning, I think, on being able to roll it out in winter is what we're targeting. Okay. So more to come there. And you are all very, very helpful in helping us think about performance metrics that we'll use to monitor and analyze the service to think about how we might extend it beyond the discretionary grant period. So more to come there. Some exciting news. We are finalizing a contract for a trip planning application, specifically the Transit app. So if you're familiar with the Transit app, if you've ever used it before, we're procuring that and we get some bonus extra features, some new communications tools, some benchmarking and survey tools, and then LTD branding on the app itself. And this has been a long time in the works, but we're really excited about getting this going. We're hoping that we can get it out to market and advertise it at the ASUO Street Fair. I think timing wise, that would be optimal for us to try and get a lot of the new students using this app. And basically this app allows, it's a really user-friendly app to do trip planning, and it's a multimodal trip planner. So you can do transit as well as the Cottage Grove Connector, our on-demand transit service down there, and then Peace Health Rides as well. Yes, questions? You can go first.
Okay. As someone who's used the transit app and not currently paying for it, what new features will I
So
have
you
access
get
to?
I believe if you're using the free version, you don't get all the gamification features. So that gets built in. So there's some competitive stuff you can do there if you set up a profile. And providing responses to surveys, you get like bonus points and stuff like that. So it's like kind of fun for users.
And is that unlocked just by like having paid for a transit pass?
Oh, no, for LTD for our procurement of the contract with Transit app. So as soon as we have the contract in place, this gets open up to anybody in Lake County.
Nice.
So everybody in Lake County will have access to the Transit Royale is what it's called app. And we're excited about it. Like it has some pretty interesting, innovative right now through our existing app. And the other feature that Transit has just successfully implemented is the ability to connect with UMO, which is our fare payment app. So you can actually go and just use Transit and you can do fare payments through the Transit app as well.
You answered my question. I was going to ask you, was it going to be integrated with the pay for fare system? Thank you.
So yeah, we're super excited about that. And then the last thing on my list is, this is kind of a small thing, but I think this is going to really help us. You know, LTD provides service for special events. So things like the Oregon Country Fair, the Butte to Butte, and other requests come in quite frequently. We now have on our webpage a special event or charter service page with FAQs on what is charter service. So when you hear charter, that's an FTA, Federal Transit Administration term, and there's very specific rules around charter service that we have to follow. So we've tried to very clearly outline what those rules are, be very transparent about it. And then we've also created a new intake form for people or organizations that are looking for charter service to actually go to that page and fill out a form, and then we can use that for a new intake process. And right now we're working with Butte to Butte for the event next year. The one thing to note about charter regulations is that we are not permitted to unfairly compete with private entities. So if somebody like Butte to Butte comes and requests service from us, we have to put that out to bid, is what it's called, so that private entities can bid on that service or potentially apply for that service beforehand. So we're working through that right now, and we're hoping to have a determination on the Butte to Butte this a little later this fall, whether or not we can continue to provide the service.
Does that include, sorry, providing extra service on existing bus routes as well as new bus routes like the Butte to Butte one?
That's a great question. So if we just need to add additional service to an existing route, that doesn't get us into charter care.
I was just gonna ask, does that come with a dollar threshold? For example, if someone comes to you and say, hey, I need a $30,000, service. At that point in time, to put something out for procurement, to get everyone to bid on it, is there a dollar threshold that you can not go over and still not have to put it out for bid?
As far as I know, there's no dollar threshold. It's just purely, we're not allowed to compete.
Oh, wow.
Directly.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if you want more information about charter rules, I'd suggest going to the website. We have some links back to the FTA regulations, so people can look at those. And I'd also be happy to include in a future meeting, we could get Brett Smith, one of our service planners. He's sort of our resident expert on charter schools, to talk to us about what that's all about.
Thank you.
Could this potentially support UO football games or other events like that in the future?
I mean, so LTD used to provide service for UVO football, and the way that we provided service in the past probably would not fly with current FTA regulations. We've been in discussions. In fact, Mike Hirsch, our chief operating officer, and I have met with U of O Athletics 2 weeks ago now to have this conversation. And one of the things U of O is very interested in having LTD support athletic events at Autzen Stadium. And I think I'd say we're very interested in also supporting those kinds of events, but we would have to do it in a way that is compliant with FTA regulation. So getting back to Peter's question, we do have Route 13 that goes on MLK. Route 13 doesn't work during football games because the traffic control plans. There could be a way, if we were to go back to the drawing board, sort of look at the overall traffic plans for special events at Autzen Stadium, maybe there's a way to actually implement or utilize the existing service, and then we could probably just add service without getting kind of caught up in the FTA regulations there. But that's sort of a long-term project. What we are doing right now is we're looking at MX and sort of collaborating on marketing MX, and then people can walk across the footbridge to get to the event. So we know people already do that, but maybe it's a matter of sort of advertising that more, getting more people using the MX system.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna hand it over to Alma since she's here. So we're on agenda items. So
Thank you, Tiffany. Thanks, folks, for your patience. Well, moving into agenda items, we are excited to appoint our new strategic planning committee members. So, to you.
Yeah, so they have been appointed. So welcome, new members. So on August 5th, LTD's Board of Directors approved a resolution appointing our new members, and I'll just name them, and then maybe you can give us a little bit of an intro, each of you, and it's interesting, you all sat there.
They sat on a
We didn't choose the spot.
We're told where to sit.
Okay, new members over here. So yeah, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves. We have your bios in here, but yeah, that'd be great. So we've got Peter Smith, we've got Paul Comrie, Sarah Mazzi, and Jack Boyson. So feel free to say hi. Why are you here?
Yeah, I'm Peter Smith. I'm a graduate student at the University of Oregon, studying community and regional planning, halfway through my program. And I'm also finishing up an internship at the City of Eugene and switching to an internship at Best this month. And yeah, I'm on this panel because pretty much ever since I'm an adult, I've been using active transportation to get around, and now I'm pursuing this as a career, and I'm really interested in ways we can make that easier in this town.
My name is Paul Comrie. I'm a transportation planner with Transportation Services at the University of Oregon. I did want to clarify one thing. I know on the packet here, I'm listed as representing University of Oregon. I just want to clarify, I'm only representing Transportation Services, not the full university. But I'm also a lifelong transit user, trying to instill that value to my son as well. We can take transit to his daycare every morning. I'm on this, I applied to join this committee. I'm here now because of the intersection between the work that I do at the University of Oregon and LTD service, and then on a personal level, wanting to make transit more accessible and safer so that more folks can confidently choose to use that mode of travel.
Sarah Mazie. I've been the Safe Routes to School coordinator for 4J School District for almost 9 years now. It's crazy. And I got into that work because of the huge intersection with transportation and climate change, mostly, but also all the other benefits. And so transit fits in with all of that. And I've been really involved with the Student Pass program and trying to help that be successful at 4J. And then as I've spent more time in the position and as I now have a ninth grader, I've become really interested in our high school transportation, which 4J and Portland Public are kind of, they have an exemption with the state to be able to use transit instead of providing school buses. And so for most of their students. So transit is really important for especially 4J high school students. And I'm just digging into that and want it to be an effective means of transportation for our students. And it is for many, for some it's not. So, yeah.
Awesome. My name is Jack Boyson. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you all. Excited to meeting the fellow newbies. I work at St. Vincent de Paul. I'm administrative director there, meaning I'm work across many departments, but a lot of my focus is on community engagement, as well as all of our homeless shelters services on the single side and on the family side. I supervise all of that. So I'm a huge LTD fan. I came here for UO, graduated in 2020. So I've almost been here 10 years and just started using my first car here in Eugene 2 years ago. So used public transportation for 8 years. I think LTD is amazing. And the more I work at St. Vincent de Paul, the more I realize how much LTD does. From cooling support to shelter support to emergency weather stuff. I'm really excited to be here. So that's why I applied, because I think LTD is so important and such an important part of this community. And I'm going to be here for the long run. My wife and I just had our first kiddo. So excited about the school district stuff. Thank you. He just turned 8 months. So exciting.
I want to chime in with one more thing because I don't want to end on it not working for some students. I also started a transit education class for 8th graders and now 9th graders this year that I hope will get to all the students because I really do want to support our students in using transit. I'm also a huge LTD fan. Thanks.
Well, thanks. It's great to have you. I think we've got a lot of good work ahead of us and hopefully we can fulfill your interests and desires with this committee. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, any questions for, not that we're going to throw any hard hitting questions at the newbies or any questions from the newbies to us? Because we're going to always make sure we put that out on the table.
Do you know everyone else on the other side of the table?
Yeah, we should.
I'll start. Vidal Francis, I'm with the Oregon Department of Transportation. I'm the Area 5 manager responsible for project delivery around here. And so I'm a huge LTD fan as well. I do bike a lot as much as I can get time to do so. So, and although it may seem like I'm here part of my job description, but the reality is this is after hours. So I'm actually just putting the time in after hours to help with this committee.
So people are not ODOT people. What is Area 5 again?
Area 5 is all of Lane County. Most of the other area managers have like 3 or 4 counties, but since this is like the second largest metropolitan area outside of Portland. This is enough for one, it actually should be two people here, but it's just.
I'm Rob Zako. I'm Executive Director of Better Eugene Springfield Transportation, formerly Better Eugene Springfield Transit. We formed 13 years ago to support extending MX Bus Rapid Transit into West Eugene. So we're huge supporters of transit. I'm happy to be here.
Everyone is very lucky to sit on the call with you, and we were talking to you about this opportunity. Alma Fumiko Jesus. I moved United Way of Lane County. I'm actually I'm the new CEO president. That's my new role. And I am the chair of this committee along with Tiffany as the vice chair, but she fill in for each other. And I'm just really glad to have you all here.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Tiffany Edwards. So professionally, I work for the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. I do all of the policy work for the chamber. And I've been there, well, I was there since 2017. And then 3 years in, I decided to come to Lane Transit District. So I worked for LTD for about 3 years doing government relations as well. And I just have I have a really strong passion for the work that LTD does, but also I'm really passionate about engaging the business community in that work. Because I think that as, the folks who are invested financially in the system, I really do want to ensure that we are doing everything we can to see that they see the value in the service that they are helping to provide. And so that's kind of why I'm here. I serve on the BEST board. I also serve on Cascadia Mobility's board of directors. And so I'm kind of involved and also the Lane Act. So yeah, so that's me.
And online we have Scooter.
Hi, my camera's not working today, but I joined the committee as a Lane Community College student. I've since graduated. Just another community member, also a wheelchair user, so I try and give a little feedback about that sometimes. And hi.
Thank you. Wonderful. Anything else, Dave?
Yeah, I guess one thing that comes to mind, something that we've been talking about now that we have our new members on board, we talked about doing a retreat or some kind of event with SBC this year. And I think whether we call it a retreat or maybe we do like a field tour, I think it might be good for us to get out and maybe go see the system as a group. And so I'll work with Alma and Tiffany on that, assuming that people are interested in doing something like that. And that could sort of be like new member orientation, initiation. So stay tuned for that. Yeah.
Love that.
And old member engagement, so that'd be really fun. All right, moving into our next agenda item, understanding serial communications under Oregon's public meeting policies.
Yes, we have a quick presentation on this, just a few slides. And we had, I think, Brianna had sent out a handout, which is in your packet tonight, just on serial communications. And so we thought it'd be helpful since we have some new members on board to go ahead and run through this. And so we can go ahead and start the slideshow here. All right, so just in terms of agenda here, we'll cover the intro and background, what are serial communications, and then best practices and tips going forward. So background. So the goal here is to clarify what serial communications are, why they matter, and then also how to avoid unintended violations. So Oregon Public Meetings Law, you can find all the details in the Oregon Revised Statutes, and there's the sections on the screen for you. Essentially what it boils down to is the law is there to ensure transparency. It applies to boards, commissions, committees, and subcommittees with decision-making or advisory authority. So that applies to SBC because you're technically a subcommittee to the LTD Board of Directors. The key requirement to keep in mind is when a quorum discusses agency business, it must happen in a properly noticed public meeting, which is what we're doing tonight. All right, next slide. Yeah.
Just for the sake of clarification, can you just explain then what a quorum is?
So
I'm
a
sorry,
quorum
but-
is is it 50% plus one? Is that what our quorum is?
I will confirm,
I
but
think it
yes.
is.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, it's defined in our bylaws, but I think it's 50%.
Which is how many actually?
We got, oh man, you guys are putting me on the spot. I should have.
8 out of 15, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can follow up with the specific details on what a. Thank you. Is. But so what are serial communications? So a series of communications, and in our modern age, we have a lot of different communications tools, and this is sort of where things can get complicated and where we run afoul of the serial communications rules is because if you're doing texting or email, what can happen is people can get added on CC, and that can sort of build up into a quorum, and then all of a sudden you're violating the rules. So basically, the risk, even if members don't all communicate at the same time, the chain of conversations can add up to. All right, next slide. And serial communications circumvent the open meetings requirements, moving deliberation into private channels. The law is concerned with decisions, but also deliberation, discussion, consensus building in advance of decisions potentially being made at a meeting. So, and then just they deprive the public the opportunity to observe that stuff happening in a public venue. So, next slide.
Actually, before you go
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm wondering what a decision is. I mean, we as a body don't we don't take actions, we provide advice. But if
you do take actions.
Well,
in fact. Okay.
Yeah, the actions, I mean,
Recommendation.
we're not final decision makers. We give advice to others. If we give advice to staff, I mean, if staff makes a presentation providing feedback, is that deliberating towards a decision? Or is it only when we formally make recommendations to the board to which we're advisory to?
My interpretation is that this applies to more formal decisions. So if we're asking this committee, if we're asking this subcommittee to vote on something, that is an official decision. I think that's where this is applying. If you're making a suggestion to me or to Brandon or other staff, as long as you're not voting on something, I mean, you're free to make comments to us.
Yeah, sort of thinking back on our work over the past year or so, I remember the rural pilot that staff came to us and had a presentation, and we provided some feedback, but we never took a vote on it, never went to the board. It was sort of really directly to staff, and I recall you sort of took that to heart and came back and sort of said, this is what staff decided to do.
Yeah.
So that feels to me like that wasn't a decision for the purposes of the public meetings law.
I share your.
Okay.
Yeah, your point there.
And I'm actually trying to recall a time, the recent past, where we've taken a vote, where we've made a recommendation to the board. We've had a lot of briefings where we're sort of getting background. I think we're sort of building towards a decision, but
Yeah, I
it's
think.
rare that we do take make.
Yeah, it's not very frequent, but the last major example would have been the system review. So we brought the draft system review recommendations to SPC. We sought a formal recommendation to the board to approve those. And so that's sort of that more formal process. And if you look at the work plan, the 3 items on the work plan are all the same sort of model where we will seek an SPC recommendation to take to the board, and you will be voting on those things. So,
That's helpful. We also, as I recall, took a formal vote on the community engagement framework.
Yeah. Okay, that would have been another one. Yep, exactly.
But both those are things that went to the board that the board then would take action on, and they themselves took a vote.
Right. Okay. So next slide. Oh, sorry, go back to the, I think I missed the.
I interrupted you.
Oh, it's okay. So yeah, best practices and tips. So just avoid forwarding or replying all to emails on SPC or LTD business. If you want to share something with the committee or a point of view or a comment, feel free to just send it to one of us, and then we can send it out to the whole committee, and then that avoids that issue. Yeah, one-way distribution from staff to members is fine. And then just if you ever have a doubt or a question, just save the deliberation for when we're. So this will be interesting, actually thinking ahead to the State of LTD event. If you all attend that event, that actually might need to be noticed as a public meeting for us.
I can't.
Yeah.
And Jack's gonna be where I am. So.
You have to strategically place us somewhere.
That's right,
like,
yeah.
all around. It'll kind of like.
sure you separate.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing for kickoff.
Okay, so that concludes that, just a helpful reminder for us all.
All right. Any other questions or anything?
I have one question. So I don't remember, because there was legislation and I don't remember what happened with it in the last long session or something. With an intermediary, right? So let's use Rob Zako as an example. I just want to clarify this because I don't know if this actually passed or if this was, so basically it was a legislation that said that you could not communicate through an intermediary. And so, you know, people that lobby for a living, I mean, this is kind of, we talk with different individual electeds, maybe on one body, but we're communicating individually with them, it's the intermediary, and might be actually, well, so-and-so, you know. And so I wasn't sure if that would apply. So,
Why are you picking on me?
well,
What did I
because,
do?
well, no, I'm just thinking, because, you know, BEST as an organization advocates,
Yes.
and specifically maybe with the LTD board, for example. And so wanting to make sure that if you have an advocacy organization who is doing the rounds on a public body like their board or SPC, is there, you know, kind of rules of engagement around that? Because I know that there was legislation that was qualifying an intermediary as something that like they were attempting to pass that legislation. I just don't remember. If
That
it was-
didn't come up in our research as putting this together, but
Yeah.
I will look into it and just see if there's something there that did pass or that
Right.
applies to this year.
And it would not apply to staff, like, so Jameson or yourself, who's talking with individual and might be helping to explain decisions that might be coming before the body. A clarification around that staff is not subject to that same. Anyway, I'm not trying to throw you a curve.
No, a little homework. is good. I don't have a response or answer right now.
I don't know where you're going with that, Tiffany. It wasn't where I thought you'd go to, but I thought that, I mean, you and I are lobbyists in some sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we have these day jobs that we're paid for that involves trying to get the mayor, county commissioner, the LTD board to do stuff. And I don't think the fact that we're a member of SPC precludes us from doing.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking
I know that's not what you were talking about,
I
but-
was using an example.
But that would be us sort of not being part of this committee of just sort of doing our day jobs and, right, that's separate.
Unrelated
But
to
you
our
were saying
role.
something else I'm not understanding.
It sounds like you're saying, and what I'm understanding is like, if I'm talking to each and every person individually with the same topic, and it's like, you know, is that as an intermediary, that law or that regulation that got passed, does that then impact those individual conversations? Can that be like if
Considered serial
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah, like if they did a discovery and were like, oh, there's like 15 different messages to everyone. So I think it is safe to it's good to be just safe considering scrutiny that we could face as a public organization, but not that we're trying to give you more homework, but that's what
It's good. to
Sam
know.
is here and other people.
Yeah,
do some
yeah.
research on it for.
I will say it was the last full session when I was with LTD and we were tracking it very closely because it would have impacted.
Mm.
And so I just didn't know if any more recent developments, because I haven't tracked that legislation since.
I don't know the full story, but I would understand that if the person doing the intermediary, however you say that word,
Intermediary.
intermediary effort, if that person is doing it in terms of trying to get a consensus for the group itself,
Yeah.
then it becomes a bit of a challenge.
Exactly.
However, if they're doing it as a member of the public, trying to get, like Rob kind of mentioned, hey, I want you to do this,
Right.
hey, I want you to do this, then it wouldn't be so much of a conflict or
Yeah.
an ethical issue. So those are the two things that we really have to weigh out.
Yeah.
on whether we should do it or not do it. That's just my thoughts on that.
Sorry.
So if I understand you, I mean, so pick back on me. I mean, say that I wanted to get the LTD board to do something as part of my day job for BESA, as part of SPC. And I went and talked to Pete Knox and Susan Cox and Gina Grimaldi and Kelly Sutherland. So that's a majority. That's a quorum of the LTD board.
You can talk to them, but my understanding is that you can't convey to them what others are saying.
Correct.
You can say, you can talk to them individually and you can
There's
lobby
a-
them,
okay,
but you
okay.
can't say, well, Gino, Susan Cox is with us here. And also so-and-so and
It's not
so-and-so.
a coordinated.
You cannot
Right.
coordinate that with them. I believe this to be true because I deal with it with city council frequently, where it's like, I'm not gonna tell you where your colleagues are at, but like that is, so that's why I wanted to clarify, because I think that while yes, you or any other member of the community can one-on-one, but to do the vote counting for them, I think that is, whether that be this body or LTD board.
So that's helpful, but in that scenario, I'm not in the LTD board. And so the public meeting laws don't apply to me as sort of a private citizen or member of a
Right.
nonprofit. I'm not in violation of those, no matter what I would say. I mean, I might be sort of accessory to it or contributing to it, but it's the board members themselves, if they engage in those communications where, well, Rob Zako told me such and such, and he heard for Pete Knox or from Susan, then that's kind of on them. And they kind of say, hey, Rob, don't tell us that stuff. We're not allowed to hear that from you. Please don't do that.
We don't want you to be accessory.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, we don't want you to, but
I'm trying to
anyway,
take some
just,
blame here, responsibility. I'm trying to be helpful.
so, yeah, so we can look, I think it's
If
important for us
there's
to look
any
into that. just to-
updates or clarification,
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
that would just be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. We'll look into it.
I don't think it would come up
Yeah.
in
but
this
just
board,
the-
in this body, but
When in doubt, go to Dave.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I think we have,
No, there's a
I'll move
question.
oh, go ahead.
we can.
There's a section in the packet about training requirements for all public officials in Oregon. Do we qualify as public officials and need to take that training?
I think so, yeah. So we'll make that available to the new members, yeah.
I think that Lane Act members fall under those requirements.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we, shut up.
Poor Dave, throwing up all kinds of curveballs.
Wonderful. All right, any other questions? All righty, we're gonna move into our lane coordinated public transit human service transportation plan. In order to start the data.
Pull up presentation, please.
Yep.
Thanks. Brandon Melton, for those of you who haven't met me, I'm a senior planner with LTD. Work on a variety of projects. One of those is updating the coordinated plan for LTD. I'm not seeing the presentation.
Oh, shoot,
It's okay.
hold on.
No
Hold
worries.
I thought I turned it on.
I spent so much time on it. I want everyone to see it. Like, wow, what a presentation.
Great.
Yes.
So worried about the other. Okay. There you go.
All right, there we go. Here we are, the LTD coordinated plan, vision, values. So wanted to start off by, describing what the purpose of the plan is. Why are we doing it? The project overview is how we're going to update the plan. And then wanted to get into some specifics about the public involvement plan. Is one of the first deliverables from, we're working with LCOG, Lane Council of Governments, as a consultant. And so they're helping us pull together the plan and deliver it. So we'll get into that document a little bit. So how are we going to engage stakeholders and the public through this process? Slide, please. So the purpose of the plan, you'll see improved transportation services for older adults, people with disabilities, and other marginalized populations. That's the core tenet. We'll do that by analyzing the landscape of the regional transportation planning in Lane County. We want to evaluate the changes that have occurred since the last update. It's been about 6 years. So we'll look at things like state and federal policy, funding, partnership, and coordination. Overall, LTD is required to do this by FDA because we receive Section 5310 funding or 5310 recipient. That program is also known as Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program. Going to get into that in the next slide. I think it's important to understand what that funding source does, since that's why we're updating the plan. It also will analyze gaps in the transportation system. So we want to look at an overall picture of transportation in Lane County and look and see where there's gaps, and then identify and prioritize projects that fill those needs. This plan ultimately will guide the STIF Advisory Committee and how we decide on how they decide for recommendations on STIF projects. So that's the State Transportation Improvement Fund for folks that are new. Some of you may be familiar or not. And then really it connects to our community outcomes. So we're looking at housing, health, education, and workforce. And you know, it's all about connection and connecting specific populations and ensuring that they have reasonable or good transportation system to work with and accessing those needs. Next slide, please. Yes, sir.
Is the scope of this plan limited to public transportation, or is it more broadly other modes of transportation? For example, you know, would e-bikes in between rural areas fall in the scope of this plan, or is it really what FTA is concerned about?
I think a lot of it is focused on public transportation. Now, it doesn't mean that we couldn't look at other transportation options that could fill potential needs. So I don't think it's going to dig deep into that. It's going to be more focused on public transit.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so 5310. I already noticed what it's called, but it improves mobility for older adults, people with disabilities, by removing barriers to transportation services and expanding transportation mobility options. It can fund capital projects or operating assistance. So a capital project would be purchasing accessible vehicles or wheelchair securement. Operating assistance is offsetting the cost to provide transportation services for older adults and people with disabilities. That would be costs like fuel, driver salaries, dispatch, those sorts of things. It can also be used for mobility management activities like coordinating service across providers, travel training, and one-call, one-click centers for trip planning. 5310 is used for projects specifically for LTD, such as maintaining our specialized services fleet, behavioral health transportation, travel training, and transportation eligibility assessments. All of these are crucial in connecting older adults and people with disabilities to housing, jobs, healthcare, and other essential needs. In FY15, just to give you a sense of scale, there's was about $975,000 in Section 5310 that were leveraged with STIF funds. So it gives you an idea of how much we're bringing in or delivering with 5310. And then, you know, the coordinated plan will include a prioritization of projects. I already mentioned that, but projects that could be funded by 5310 and or STIF. So wanted to, you know, I brought up STIF a couple of times in the STIF committee. I mentioned a couple of times as well. So we're going to be utilizing the STIF committee as the steering committee for this project. They kind of fit the bill as far as we want to meet certain diversity requirements on our board and are on the board, excuse me, on the steering committee that are required by FTA, but that group kind of fits that that criteria already, but they're also going to be using this plan to help them make decisions in the future. So it made a lot of sense to use the experience of this group to form this plan. So wanted to pause for a second to make sure that everyone understands why we're updating the plan. Any questions so far? All right, next slide, please.
And the plan is going to be good for the next.
Yeah, about 5 years is what we try to update it. Yeah. So I'll go into the project overview here, just to touch on each of these phases, we'll call them. So a project management phase. This is really developing a work plan, a timeline, and the draft public involvement plan, which we're wrapping up now and bringing to you this evening. We'll talk more specifically about public engagement. That's going to continue on throughout the development of the plan. And we'll outline that pretty clearly in the public involvement plan. A policy assessment is looking at federal, state, and local requirements to really assess is this plan meeting the requirements of FTA. That memo's largely drafted already, but we'll continue to work with LCOG to finalize it. We'll evaluate existing conditions that'll look at demographics, the local economy, our existing fixed and fixed route paratransit, state and federal revenue, things like that. And then we'll look at the needs assessment. So that's identifying underserved groups, our local planning efforts, and identifying gaps in our transportation system. We'll also look at coordinating practices and projects, reviewing coordination practices, development of project lists and prioritization criteria, and then look at funding resources. So how are we going to pay for it? And then finally, we'll have a draft plan that'll have a public comment period leading up to ultimately adoption by the LTD board. Any questions on that approach? All right. We can move to the next slide and get into the public involvement plan itself. So this was included in your packet. I listed out just some key pages of where things are at, but wanted to go through the background and purpose is really a brief overview of the project and public involvement plan. It outlines the guiding principles of the document, which are taken directly from the community engagement framework, LTD's community engagement framework. So that's woven throughout this, the public involvement plan. Stakeholder mapping begins on page 5, which identifies several key groups represented. So we're looking at geographical representation for urban and rural communities, age representation, 65 plus and under 18, racial minority groups, and those with disabilities, zero vehicle households, as well as other focuses. A table of groups and entities that we're considering outreach. For outreach starts on page 13. This includes transportation partners and folks that are required by FTA, passengers and advocates, human service partners, education-related groups, healthcare and social services providers, and housing and development and others. So that's really mapping out who do we need to reach out to. And so I would encourage you to look closely at that, even if it's not this meeting. But if you see anyone that we're missing, please reach out. And then outreach and engagement strategies. So this provides an outline of the outreach that's scoped for the project. That's 3 to 4 lane STIF advisory committee meetings, 3 to 4 advisory body meetings, including SBC this evening, Lane Act and Central Lane MPO, 5 to 6 meetings with rural and tribal communities, and other outreach efforts, including a project website, surveys, social media outreach, and live events. And then the engagement schedule is included on page 24, which is an outline of when we'll be doing those activities through the planning effort. And then finally, we're looking at tracking progress, which is how we'll record feedback and understand if we successfully engage the community by looking at who shows up and who we're able to engage with. So are there any questions or feedback on the public involvement plan?
I have a question.
Yeah.
The plan is for people with disabilities and older adults, or does it go beyond that?
In other marginalized communities, I would say. So the focus for 5310 is older adults and people with disabilities, but I think we also look at other marginalized communities like younger than 18 is one, and we have a slightly higher than average zero vehicle household. So folks that are impacted by transit pretty directly.
So your stakeholder group aligns with you're trying to have the stakeholder group align with the groups that would be served by this?
Yeah, that's the
Okay,
intent.
okay.
So if you see anything that's missing,
Okay.
groups that might not be covered, or you have some ideas on some potential direct outreach or invitations, we'd love to hear that. That's why we brought it to you all. Ralph?
I'm trying to understand, well, let me put it in the form of what is it you're asking the public that you're engaging with to tell you? At first, it sounded to me like this was sort of a summary of what services are provided, what resources are there, what's funding, which is more sort of something that staff could do. It's more on the supply side. Is what you're trying to find out from the public what their needs are, what the demand is?
Yeah, I
And
think.
the plan sort of documents both, here's the need and here's how we can respond to that. And so you're trying to figure out from the public where they need to, who needs to get to where, when kind of thing? Is that what you're asking them?
Yeah, so Dave, you have.
Oh, well, just the other piece is like, are the services we're providing with these funds working today?
Okay,
Like, that's
Okay.
the big question. So,
Okay.
And that'll be part of this, outreach we do is like, here's how we're spending the money today. Here's the projects we're delivering with this money. Like, that's part of sort of the existing conditions and outreach. And then when we find gaps or if we need to sort of change our expenditure, program with
Okay.
these funds, then
that's helpful. Thank you.
And I think it's worth noting the current prioritization is based around sustaining the programs that we have today and are working today, building upon those existing programs where there's a need. And then if there are new types of projects that come along, that would be sort of the third priority. But that's something that we want to get into with this plan update and see if that's still how the priority should be set.
So it's like intentional, like a feedback loop as we're going through it, like you said, refine and adjust. Yeah. Good.
So where is this $1 million of funding that you're talking about going to right now?
Yeah, actually have the sheet with me, being prepared. So, got a spreadsheet and glad to share it with the group. And so this comes from the coordinated plan funding. There's a table that we have developed here. So I will also start with maybe the largest ticket items, which are you've got, well, and this is actually looking over 2 years. So that $1 million is kind of split. We do things in bienniums with STIF. But over 2 years of preventative maintenance for specialized service vehicles. So those are our paratransit fleet, like RideSource. You'll probably see them around town that provide services directly for people with disabilities that can't use our fixed route system. About $800,000 in 5310 goes to that. And this is looking at FY 26 and 27. And then another big ticket item is our transportation eligibility assessment. So part of writing the paratransit system is understanding if folks really need this service, or could we serve them, with fixed route or some other alternative public transportation. We also look at do direct behavioral health transportation. That's $290,000 over 2 years of 5310. And all of that is matching STIF formula dollars, the State Transportation Improvement Fund formula dollars that we receive. We have to match a certain level with that. And so the $5310 allow us to do that. But I can send this out to the group too. Probably curious about those projects.
So just some clarifying questions about the different advisory committee bodies. So you have 3 to 4 meetings scheduled with the Lane STIF, that's the primary advisory committee.
Right, that's our steering committee for the project.
And then the other advisory bodies, on the schedule, it says 3 to 4. Is that number of meetings or is that number of bodies that are being met with?
I think we scoped out that number of meetings, so it'll probably look like one we're having meeting now. It'll probably look like a meeting with Lane Act. It'll look like and another meeting with Central Lane MPO, and maybe a second meeting for SPC.
Okay. And then the regional partner meetings, have those been identified, or because I see kind of generic term, local regional partners, including rural and tribal communities, 5 to 6 meetings.
Yeah, those haven't been identified specifically yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. We'll be bringing this to our STIF advisory committee. Right now, we're down a few members and we need to have filled up those spots. So we're working towards doing that and should be able to meet with them, I believe in October, where they'll be able to provide some feedback and maybe some direction as a steering committee to specific groups that we should be reaching out to.
Okay.
Happy to bring your feedback as well.
So if I could just sort of add, so multiple committees involved in this project. Ultimately, it requires board approval. And so prior to board approval, we'll bring the draft plan to SBC for review, comment, and we'll be seeking a recommendation from SBC to take to the board. Because we intermingle the 5310 and STIF funding, and because the STIF advisory committee already sort of meets the criteria for a steering committee for this project, that's why we're utilizing the STIF advisory committee, and we'll be working really closely with them. So that's another committee that will provide input along the way. I think we included at least one other and maybe even 2 other SBC presentations.
So one more follow-up question. So the next STIF advisory committee is when you're going to be finalizing the regional partners to reach out to? Or they're just providing recommendation and the final decision will be later?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think we've solidified that with our project team yet.
Okay.
So we're meeting with LCOG as our consultant on the project about every 2 weeks. As a project team meeting, but we can start laying out some of those specifics. But I would say if you have some feedback for us to bring to that STIF committee before October, I think that would be good to send our way.
No specific recommendations right now. I'm just a little concerned about the timeline. If you're starting that in October, it sounds like that first month is just determining which groups will be you'll be meeting with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there's some key players that are probably fairly obvious to engage, but then maybe if we can reach a little bit further than the standard outreach, then we'll do that.
A missing stakeholder, perhaps, I don't know. You've got school transportation operators in the private transportation. Just the 4J provides their own.
Mm-hmm.
With public providers.
Yeah, public.
So public providers of school transportation specifically.
Yes, I can't remember. Springfield does as well. Springfield.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good call.
Those might be the only 2 in your area.
Yeah. What about Bethel?
Bethel hires first student.
First, okay. So they would be private. 4J.
4J in Springfield.
Yeah, Springfield.
Mhm.
Got it. Thank you.
I kind of have a question, but it's sort of feedback. My question is going back to the project overview, and you had this kind of low on the list, or low on the list, which is for funding resources
Mhm.
as a, later task. And I know from experience that whenever there are projects that we're working on in our community, and we don't know how we're going to pay for it, we have no idea, but we're going to create a plan first, and we're going to get all these people to weigh in and everything else. And then when it comes down to time to okay, who's going to pay the bill? Usually there's some sort of tax or, the payroll tax, both locally and at the state level, is paid by employees and employers. I'm sure anybody here with a job is paying it, but I think that it's really important, and I can't emphasize this enough, to get buy-in from the folks who, and engagement, I should say, not buy-in so much, it's just heavy engagement from the people who at the end of the day are going to have to say, yes, this is coming out of my paycheck, or yes, my employees we're gonna pay this on behalf of our employees. Because it cuts into the business's bottom line and all those things. So it's not to say that these aren't like really valuable projects. I just think that if we don't get ahead of that and make sure that we have robust engagement from the folks you don't typically think of, because they aren't on the bus every day, if ever, but they are paying the bills and they will have strong opinions
Mhm.
if they're not involved in the process.
Yeah.
So you do have like the chambers of commerce and
Sure.
whatnot, but, you know, I think that that's just something that
Okay.
we've seen it time and time again in this community where we could have done a better job. And so I just want to put that out there ahead of time.
It's a good reminder. Yeah, I think just circling back to sort of like the requirement for this plan is we get it's a formula-based distribution of federal funding, and the
Mhm.
feds expect us to tell them how we're spending that in a strategic and prioritized way that incorporates community feedback. So the intent here is not to say we need to increase the payroll tax. Or,
No,
this is specifically for those FTA funds that we get on a population basis. So,
Yeah.
That's the intent.
But I think that even so, I think if you have robust engagement from the folks, I mean, even if the money is being, you know, it's coming through the feds, I think we're all paying it. And I
Right.
think that, you know, to recognize that the people who are paying it, the people in whatever form, whether it's their income taxes, they're paying it because they have jobs and because they're paying their federal taxes. And so I just, you know, I mean, I don't want to like beat this to death, but I
Yeah.
just do think that public entities, this is kind of, you know, when you're dealing with public funds, it's coming from the public. And with something as, I mean, I see transit as such, I see it as an amenity, just like a school system, just like anything else that we all benefit from when it's good and robust. But if we sometimes, I think in the world in transportation, we talk about the stakeholders being the people who use the system or people who we're designing it for, not necessarily those who pay it, which is kind of more broad. And so I only say this to just be more thoughtful and involving. Yeah, sorry.
I'm going to go off a little bit on tangent, but I want to underscore what you're saying, Tiffany. I'm on the Oregon Transit Association Board of Directors, and we had a meeting earlier today. And there's this discussion at the state level about state funding, not federal funding for transportation. The employee payroll tax that funds the STIF was instituted in 2017 at 0.1% on all employees. The Oregon Transit Association asked that get raised as much as 0.5%. And sort of the compromise back and forth where we're at right now is that it's going to get raised to 0.2%, but only for a few years, and then it'll sunset. And I'll just share what you're saying, Tiffany, that the whole tenor of discussion at today's meeting was very different from I had ever heard before. Before it was sort of like, this is a real good bargain, you know, it's not a lot of money, Oregon is going to pay for it. And what the lobbyists, the OTA, were saying is there's a lot of pushback, and this source of funding in Oregon probably doesn't have a long shelf life, and we shouldn't depend upon or expect it to continue because people feel like, hey, I'm working, I drive, I don't get any benefit from this, I'm paying for other people to do that, and needing to find another funding source. Now, that's beyond sort of the scope of what you're doing, but I want to underscore what you're saying, that the people who pay are also stakeholders as well as the people who benefit.
So maybe, I mean, again, I'm the oversimplifier all the time, but so recognizing that we have some of our stakeholders we're going to be listening to are, you know, chamber and other folks who, I mean, I see that there are directly impacted business partners that are on this list. So maybe this is again, marketing is maybe this is a marketing opportunity for us, right? Yeah. So to your point, I think and again, I didn't see that specifically in here, but thinking about the feedback loop. So as we're hearing from the community, reporting back what we're hearing. So it's helping build out that we're listening. This is very community centered in our approach. We're listening and we're hearing and sharing this back. And these are the challenges and the problems that we're helping to solve, and being able to integrate some of those, even the business challenges, right? And again, not trying to kumbaya this, but like, you know, the rising tide lifts all ships. So if we're able to help ensure that folks have access to the services and supports they need, that helps build the economy longer, right? So I just think that this is an opportunity for us to be able to do a number of things. We have some requirements that we have to hit. We are integrating this voice into the stiff process. So I feel like that makes it, that really integrates those bodies and makes that work move faster. But this also gives us the opportunity to tell a story, a deeper story about listening to the community and reporting back and showing how mobility is helping to elevate folks. So if more folks are able to get to work on time, that helps our businesses, right? If we're looking at it from the business lens. So I think if we're able to, again, this might be an opportunity for us to utilize something that's required, but to also help us tell a deeper, bigger story. And so maybe that's one of the things that I was kind of looking at this and thinking, what might be not missing, but maybe that feedback loop. So we're actively listening, we're being there, we're not just informing what's going to happen, but we're hearing. But then we can share that back as well. And so maybe being able to bring some of that information back to your point, Tiffany. So we are talking more collectively. I think one of the observations I've had in our community, sometimes we're able to, everybody has an idea, but we want to do our idea. And this is the opportunity for us to say, okay, this is a challenge we're having over here. How can there be a solution over on this other side? And so we're really looking at this more with a holistic ecosystem lens. So I'm just throwing that out there because I hear what you're saying, and I feel like talking to different folks, there's a lot of different angles, but this is the opportunity I feel like for LTD to say, yes, and how do we integrate that into this bigger solution? So you might not be riding the bus, you might always drive, but guess what? You go to work, your coworkers riding the bus, and that impacts you. So just trying to see the more holistic ecosystem.
And can I just add, because thank you. I would also, we have the chamber has a group that meets weekly, and we dive into policy issues. And Sam from LTD serves on that. And he had the group we had him do, just like ride MX one morning. It was just like the summer. So we all just got on the bus, we rode it to the Springfield station and back. And those folks, I tell you, there was probably 25 or so. Most of them have never been on the bus before. And they had a lot of really thoughtful insights about the experience and just kind of like, how would I pay if we had to pay, and it was really, so I would implore you to think about like ways to get outside the box, because when you are engaging folks and trying to educate them, it actually was incredibly helpful for them to experience it firsthand. Because then instead of just having, data and facts and figures kind of, this more technical, it took an hour and it was actually really helpful. And I think that they saw the system, and we mentioned that for this group. I think that's a fantastic idea, because I think that if people have never, or you don't experience it regularly. So I'll be quiet.
I don't know if we're like giving you feedback that sound useful to you. You're trying to satisfy federal requirements to develop this plan and just do the plan. And we're like saying all this other stuff. But Alma, I want to underscore what you said about an opportunity to build consensus. Mayor Karen Knutson spoke to the State Club of Eugene on Friday, and she was asked questions about this. So Eugene's budget and the fire service fee, which was a situation that she inherited. And she said, looking back, she said, there was this planning process, if you will, or this whatever, that resulted in a recommendation, but not consensus. And what she said back to the audience of the City Club is that when the City of Eugene circles back to these budget things, there has to be a process that results in consensus. That sort of everybody who's key to that has some buy-in in it. So I don't know if this plan, if that's the role for this, there's an opportunity to that, but that's what I was hearing you say, Alma, that there might be an opportunity for that. Which would involve, again, not just the people who, receive benefits, but people who pay for that, and having a conversation involving all of those.
Fortunately, we have Brandon Melton here. So great senior planner. So this plan and project is serving a very specific function. I think the conversation we're having right now is sort of getting into the territory of our long range plan. So the long range plan is sort of where we're going to have some of these bigger, much harder conversations, I would tell you, because we hear a lot of times like, why don't you provide more service? Like, why can't you provide a crosstown connector? Or why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And that's where we're going to have the big dollar conversation. So we'll get there. But I do want to keep a sort of focus on, like, this is a specific sort of scope limited project that really is intended to address the mobility needs of some of the most vulnerable people in our community. That's really the intent of this project. We're going to have those bigger conversations. I really look forward to having, because I know we have a great group of people here to help.
I have a much more focused
good point.
question recommendation. sorry. Are you aware that Lane County Public Health has received an ODOT Innovative Mobility grant? And I mean, so you must be aware, because what they're doing is, this people they're dealing with is a lot of overlap. So just
It's,
talk to Joe Rogers.
yeah, Joe Rogers took over that grant for Teresa.
Yep, I had a meeting.
You know,
Good.
okay.
Super, great.
And sorry, I realized I'm not
That's,
stewarding the meeting very well. It's like,
that's fine. And I'll be really brief. I think a lot of folks who don't use the system, but yet they're paying for it, don't really realize that in a sense, they have a vulnerability. And that is, there's going to come a time when they're really going to need it. So then they jump on it. So part of our selling point, and I'm going a roundabout way here, is that, hey, yes, you're paying for it, but you know what? It's there just in case you need it. So there's a value in its availability that we can sell to help make that conversation go further. But again, I'm going about a roundabout way.
I mean, I love that you're thinking about it in those terms, and having Anna Zieberts here to help us talk about that as a community in October, I think is going to be great. And yeah, thinking about like, we are all going to need transit at some point in our lives, right? Whether it's temporary or permanent disability or aging, it's a very important. Sorry.
Scooter, go ahead.
Not to sound like morbid about it, but there's also a saying that a lot of disabled folks toy around with. It says disability is the only minority that anybody can join at any time.
That's a really good point. Very similar to Bell's saying. Thank you, Scooter.
So with the very limited scope of this project that you're talking about and the very broad engagement that I see happening here, I guess my biggest concern is that we do ask of a lot of surveys and a lot of outreaches. Is there anything that you're doing to kind of, I guess, temper the expectations of people you're engaging with to make it clear we're doing this for this very specific purpose, or the 180 of that to try to double dip and use this engagement for other work as well? So that way you don't have to keep going back to folks with different engagement.
Yeah.
If I could just start off, so that's exactly why we wanted to kind of link the STIF advisory committee with this group, because if we had sort of done these things separately, we'd be having the same conversations sort of at the same time. So I think we could find some efficiencies there. And then of course, things that we hear here through this process that maybe don't get addressed specifically with Vision 310 funds will for sure find their home because other planning efforts like the Long Beach.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to St. Vinny's or something, for example, and asking for their input in this plan,
right,
or something like that. Yeah.
And I think that's worth noting. We can sort of prime the fuse, for lack of a better term, for more engagement to come. This is very focused on this specific funding program and how these programs that we're spending dollars on. But if you're really excited about this, we're going to be talking about the future of transit in Lane County for the next 20 years. So that's something I think people will be able to really sink their teeth into.
I had a quick comment just about language, because I think during this conversation I've heard there's those that pay and those that benefit. I think we should be careful, especially this body. Everybody's paying and everybody's benefiting, whether or not they're using public transit. If they're not using public transit, the people that are, it's less congestion on the road. And those that are using public transit are also paying into the system. So I think we should just be careful about not trying to create kind of artificial groups of those that pay and those that benefit.
Okay. Feedback or responses? This has been a really rich conversation. I know we kind of took a deep tour a little bit and the scenic route, and we came right back. So that's why David's here to kind of keep us focused. But yeah, just again, I think there's the thing I appreciate most is there's been a lot of not that the work has been siloed, but looking for opportunities to cross-pollinate and integrate. And so and all of the acronyms, you are all much more, I was not in transportation when I got on this committee, so I know you're all much more well-versed at some of the acronyms, but as we go forward, you're gonna have to kind of see some more of that cross-pollination happening that the team is doing, so it's really helpful for us, so thank you. All right.
Sorry, I have one last
Yeah,
clarifying
no
question. Just looking at the different groups and that you've identified here. Under neighborhood organizations, I only see Eugene's neighborhood organizations. Recognizing that I am new to the region, does Springfield not have, I'm saying,
That's correct. They do not.
okay. And other municipalities don't really have neighborhood associations, it's just Eugene?
Eugene is the only
Just Eugene.
city that has a program.
Okay.
Sanction.
It's a good question. That's a question.
It's a great question.
Well, maybe considering that, right, like there's an opportunity, and I want to be mindful about resources and what is a parallel in other communities that could bring out that voice of folks too in those areas. So again, just any help that this committee can give on that, we can, and be mindful too. Again, there's only so many staff and so many people in the community, but if we can help kind of think about some of those other parallel groups and different stuff, we're happy to help. Else, anyone? All right, well, given that there's nothing else to share, I think we're gonna be able to adjourn at 6:51, which I'm really impressed by, because I never really remember when this meeting ends anymore.
It just says we're done.
Is our next meeting
I can do the
in
gavel, yeah, so I
November.
guess it's official.
November? And what's on the agenda tentatively?
Tentatively, we've got the service policy update. I hope we have something on the long range plan, but I'm not gonna say that's 100% yet. So the service policy will be the big one, and it will actually also have the fare system roadmap that I talked about, which the roadmap will be then. Those will be kind of two big ones, and yeah, and I'll work with Alma.
Yeah, and mark items might pop on there depending, so.
In the interim, if we have questions or feedback on what's been presented today, should that be emailed directly to you
Send all
or?
your emails today.
Well.
Copy everyone.
We don't have everybody's email address. No.
Don't reply all.
Dave and Brandon, that-
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question, Paul, thank you so much. And always feel free to ask anything, because Dave is here, and can answer all the questions and move them over. All right, 6:52. Thank you all so much. Welcome, thank you for being here.